Okay, it is 9 a.m. and it is Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, and this is our regular council meeting, and I will call the meeting to order. First order of business is acknowledgement of the Indigenous peoples. The town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. And before we move on to the adoption of the agenda, I just wanted to recognize that we have a change in our deputy mayor schedule. So outgoing deputy mayor is now Councillor Shippolt, and incoming deputy mayor is Tina Hutchinson. So thank you, Deputy Mayor or Councillor Shippolt, for your efforts in Deputy Mayor. And I'm looking forward to seeing Deputy Mayor Hutchinson in the role. So adoption of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda, and is there anything that needs to be changed or added to the agenda? If not, just looking for a motion to accept Councillor Musker.
Yes, thank you, Acting Mayor. I move that we accept the agenda for the March 4th, 2025 regular council meeting as presented.
Thank you for that motion. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? Councillor Shippolt, I didn't see your hand go up, sorry. Okay, thank you, and that is carried. Moving on to delegations. From the Rocky Christian School, we have Rob Duker here. And if you want to come up front, and just a reminder, press the red button and then everyone can hear you. And I will pass it over to you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to come here. I came here, I think, at the invitation of one of the members, who I won't disclose the name, but I took it as a dare, so here I am. So you have, I believe, received a package that includes notes from me, and then a copy of your policy, the town policy, and policies of 7 other jurisdictions, 7 other municipalities with respect to ice time allocation. And so I want to begin. Sorry, I am going to turn my phone off. I had it on because I had to turn my hearing aids up, and now I just got a phone call. You can't hear it in my hearing aids, so sorry about that. So I wanted to start with something. I don't want to read everything that's in the presentation. I think you all have been able to read it, but start with something that's in the second last paragraph on the first page, which is I'm not here to lodge a complaint of any sort. That I'm here to act proactively in anticipation that there might be some snags with respect to ice time allocation for next hockey season. So I'm here just kind of to make sure that you have an opportunity to have a look at a policy which is yours, to see if it's doing what you want it to do. If there's a number. If you look at the second page of the presentation, I'm just jumping straight to there. There's, first of all, there's a link, if you have it online, to a hyperlink to your policy. So if you don't have your policy in print, you can just link there. But in section 2.0 of the policy, it says that it refers to ICE 2.2, that allocation of your arena facilities are equitable, reasonable, and fair. And so it's a question about what that means with respect to the rest of the policy. It also referred to 5.4, where which is further in, which and actually, 5.3, the town of Rocky Mountain House goals with respect to development of recreational activities in youth. I don't know if those goals are articulated, but I suspect there's a relationship between equitable and fair and the goals of the development for recreation for youth. And then 5.4, the best meets the needs of the community. So those are the things that I kind of want, concepts I would like you to engage with respect to this policy. Does this policy actually fulfill those things that are in sort of within the agreement? Does it hold together? I would also point out that there's an appendix on the policy, which is Appendix A, which is dated 2021. So I think the intention is for that appendix to be updated annually. And so, and I would suspect that somewhere within that appendix for 2024 and now 2025 would be some reference to Rocky Christian School, to Mustangs, to Ringette, perhaps other organizations that I'm unaware of that are users of the arena facilities in this town. The question that I want to raise has to do with sanctioning. So if you look in definitions in paragraph 3, one of them is it talks about sanctioned adult hockey league and sanctioned minor hockey league, and these are organizations that are sanctioned by Alberta Hockey, and indeed Central Alberta Hockey League is a sanctioned organization within Alberta Hockey. But there are other organizations, including Fun Team Alberta, which Mustangs are associated with. We play against teams that are in Fun Teams Alberta, but we are not a member because primarily the thing they offer is insurance, and by virtue of being a school, our team has insurance already. But they will play against any other team that has adequate insurance coverage for their players. Alberta Hockey doesn't reciprocate that, or Hockey Alberta, sorry. But I think the question for you is like what is fair and equitable with respect to the people that you represent. So you have, so we have, minor hockey, which arguably is like the better hockey players in town. Although I think anybody who's involved with Trailblazers would know, and if anybody here happened to be a referee, he would know that that Trailblazers has many players that probably could play minor hockey. So there's overlap in terms of ability. But probably some of the deciding factors in whether you're involved with Trailblazers or Rocky Christian School hockey or Mustangs or minor hockey is expense and time commitment. And so fair and equitable, I think, would involve sort of trying to bridge those gaps and not say, oh, somebody can afford it, or somebody who, by virtue of the fact they have a two-parent family and can travel more, that they should have greater access to ice time than somebody who has to be in Trailblazers or in Rocky Christian School hockey by virtue of just their station in life, their situation. Furthermore, I would say that we live in this place called David Thompson Country. Same person, secretary or librarian at school. Anyway, I'll talk with her later. We live in David Thompson Country, which is, I think, arguably the most beautiful place on the planet. I think most of you would concur with that opinion. But we encourage people to go outside a lot, right, and to be active in many ways. And so it's one of the reasons that people are in hockey other than minor hockey is because they want to play high school or school volleyball or basketball, or they want to spend a lot of time outdoors doing ice climbing and tobogganing and skiing and all the things that, that are wonderful about the area. And so I think that somehow or other, we need to question that further. I have attached copies of every policy that I could find with respect to ice allocation. There's 7 there. I couldn't find any others other than cities that I thought might be irrelevant to our situation, cities over 100,000 like Red Deer or Lethbridge or Medicine Hat or Fort McMurray or Calgary or Edmonton. That might be all of them in Alberta. So I did all the best comparisons that I could. There may be others. I have been told that this policy dated 2021 and 2021, it was researched somewhat extensively, but I couldn't find research that would back up what's found in the allocation priorities, and you see them there. There's 10 priorities, and beyond my own concerns, there's other questions like where does Clearwater County fit in this? Is that a non-local 10th priority user group, or is that part of first priority if they had a Clearwater County thing? So I'll leave that to you because that's outside of what I'm presenting today, but it's just something if you're reviewing this policy, then that's also probably an aspect of the policy worth taking a look at. But what I found in all of the other policies, so if you go through, there's a page where called comparisons in my document, right, where Bashaw, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. I've never been to Bashaw. Was it Bashaw? Yeah. Okay. Where local minor sports organizations are lumped together in one priority level. Devon, all user groups must present a schedule of requested ice times for the season by the 4th week in July. So there's this, everybody does it, and then we figure it out. We're not doing this, and so, and there's a priority and expectation, I think, of collaboration of groups. And I think if you do too much of this, maybe micromanagement of how this goes, there's less expectation of collaboration, right? I would contend that, at least. The Grand Prairie Storm has high priority in accordance with a license agreement, and similarly, Lacombe has something like they have what's called a marquee team. So we could, if we put a policy to say the Rams, I think, is Rocky's marquee team. You could say, okay, they get a priority because they are our marquee team. And I think probably, without being stated in the policy, so I'm guessing that the distinction is that people buy tickets for marquee teams, and so there's some expectation that the arena will be available, and that they're at a certain time because they're selling tickets in advance. I think there might be more to it. So I just throw that out there. Lac La Biche, one priority level, and Lacombe also has a requirement for ice times for the following season are booked prior to June 30. And then, Ponoka, no sanctioning priority, and then in Sundre, no distinction made among all the various use. So all of these seem to sort of are contrary to the allocation priorities that are in our Rocky Mountain House policy. And I would challenge you to consider changing that in as much as it doesn't necessarily agree with the provision that there will be fair and equitable access to ice. So that's much of it. Our current situation, which I identify on page 1, so around back to it, is that in September, it was late September, there's a meeting of the Fun Team Alberta organizations that we compete with, and I was not able to come to that meeting with ice times in pocket, and that's really what I want. So really, the short thing that I want, in spite of however the policy evolves, is that I can come to that meeting and say that we have an ice time a home ice time every second week on a Friday night at 7:30. That'd be the perfect thing. Just every other week, 7:30 or 7 o'clock, right? On one of our ice surfaces. So we're not asking. We're the smallest user in the group, right? So that's not a lot of ice times. But I'd like to not feel like we're the, that all these other places like Ponoka and Rimbey, I think I list them there. That we are the one that goes hat in hand, saying we would like you to schedule games with us on the promise that we will come back, and we did keep that promise. Partially with ice time from Caroline, because we couldn't secure ice time here as early as we could in Caroline. We would like that not to be the case. We are right next door to that arena, right? And that's our home. So we would, So I don't know if I've used up my full allotment of time, but I think I've said mostly of what I would like to say here, and I would just urge you to give it your full consideration and reconsider the policy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Duker, for coming in and presenting. Does council have any questions? Okay, I am not seeing any questions. I know this is a topic that we haven't seen just today.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's ice time is a very precious commodity, and it's very tough to accommodate all of the user groups. I do know that the ice user group meeting, I believe it happens sometime in the summer.
Yep.
That is usually where the conflicts get sorted out between minor hockey and the Mustangs and the figure skating and power skating, all of that.
Yep.
Because typically there's always
Yeah.
overlapping and conflict in schedule, but I'm not seeing any other questions, so we will obviously talk about this further down in our agenda. But I wanted to thank you for coming in today, and thank you for presenting and giving us all this information.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. This has been nothing short of a pleasure. Oh, by the way, if any of you are interested, Thursday night, we have an information session about the Rocky Christian School expansion in our gymnasium. You're all more than welcome to come. 7, I think. If you're there at 7 and it starts 7:30, you're just early, right? So, yeah.
Well, thank
Okay.
you,
No,
thank you for
thank you
that
very much.
information, and good luck on that meeting.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't take my sip of this.
Okay, so we're going to move on our agenda. So next item on our agenda is adoption of the previous minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And is there any errors or omissions or any changes that need to be made? Councillor Schipholt.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'll make the motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to delegation business, the Rocky Christian School ice user agreement. What discussion do we have on that? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm, we were in the process, or we will be in the process coming up reviewing policies?
Yeah, so the next GPC meeting is actually a review of policies, but I mean, that's more, it isn't going into specific policies. There's a bunch of old policies we're looking to council to rescind, and we've identified, I think, 3 policies that need review or upgrading. This is not one of them, because it's not that old of a policy. So.
Thank you.
And Councillor Schipholt.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Having read through all the policies that he gave us, all 7, it does seem like there's a difference between the other 7 that are there and ours. Ours seems far more specific in the priority list compared to the others. I guess the question I would have, maybe this policy should be reviewed again, and maybe we should be looking at the priority list and try to remove some of the problems that we've seen in the past and try to change that policy. I think it may be due. I just throw that out there because I think what he's presented makes sense. And if other communities are got a little bit leaner in how they look after it, maybe we don't have to be so delicate in naming each individual group.
Councillor Musker.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'll start by saying how much I appreciate all the time, effort, and energy that went into this delegation report. The thing that jumped out for me was in his observations and his notes, number 4, no other community in the study permits an organization to control a large block of ice times, with many of those ice times to be canceled or returned without penalty after the end of October. He mentioned that in the appendix, this was written up in 2021, if I remember correctly. Well, a lot has changed since then. We were just getting into COVID and whatnot. But I think that's something that needs to be looked at again. Without penalty, or you can come in and just reserve this huge block only to say, yeah, no, we don't need this anymore, when everybody's trying to plan their season. It may be time for just some fresh eyes on this whole thing and just make sure we're meeting what we want to do, which is fair and equitable access to ice time for every group, every user group.
Just a comment from administration. So I think what council needs to realize, I mean, this policy is a fallback policy. Really, the intent of administration when we have the user group meeting is collaboration between all of the organizations to try to work out a schedule that works for everyone. I mean, if there's conflict there, then the policy comes in, okay, we have to make a decision then. And this provides us with that test or work to make that decision. And I just ask council to be cautious, because, you know, even with the block time, I think minor hockey, they can't come in with a set schedule at the user group meeting also. So there's a lot in play in creating this ice time. But really what we're looking for is collaborations between the groups at our user meeting to achieve that. And from my understanding, the school was late to the table, and Wes, just correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to be wrong, but I think last year the school was, you know, coming in late, right? So I think, you know, hopefully this year they're at the table at the beginning, so.
Yes,
Okay.
good morning, council. Yeah, to speak to sort of the policy, yes, it was written in 2021. Lots have happened. We do have new groups. At that point, we had one rec hockey program. Since that time, we have now the Mustangs. This year, in September, the Christian school Ringette is now in town, and I know that actually sitting right beside me is the lady who helped me write that policy and did all of the investigation and research into that policy. One of the challenges we say at the end of the season, here we'll have an ice user meeting. How'd the season go? Do we know a whole year in advance, a look ahead to what our special events, what tournaments, what are your base needs going to be? And then when we meet in July, it's like many of them have some of their registration numbers and know what numbers of teams. The sanctioned hockey, yeah, that would be our junior B team. The reason that they're listed as number one is because their league sets their schedule in August. So they need to provide the required number of ice times for their 32 home games or whatever that they have. Minor hockey is our sanctioned hockey group. Part of it is their league, with the Call Hockey League. They provide them with a block of time well in advance so they can do the scheduling amongst all the levels and all the teams of all the minor hockey associations. So, and we have the policy set. So by the end of October, that's when their league needs to finalize their schedules, at which time all that ice time that minor hockey didn't need but have provided to their leagues to create the schedules is returned to the town, and that's when we can give it out to the other organizations. As Mr. Duker said, yeah, he came to the table in September. We managed to find time during the week for their gym class, is what they classified, to use ice during the week, during the day. It's part of joint use, actually. And then the times that they needed on the weekends, yeah, we weren't able to provide that prior to getting all that ice back from minor hockey. And then after that, all of his requests through our ice schedule, we were able to give them games, but not in that early part because we didn't know what minor hockey needed or what their leagues needed. So that's sort of the gist of the policy. And again, as we meet in July, and then we typically meet in early September, just as they're going on the ice to sort of, and then we're always in constant contact with all of the ice user groups. And I know our rec or guest service coordinator that does all of our scheduling, she's pulling her hair out during the season to make things work, right? So the policy, yes, does it need tweaking? As he mentioned, the appendix, we've got 3 organizations now that weren't there in 2021, but we've been working with all of them, and I think for the most part we've managed to meet their needs, certainly as the season goes on. And now as the season is winding up, minor hockey, I believe, only has 1 team that's still left in playoffs. A lot of ice becomes available. It gets picked up by other groups that are looking for ice at this time of the year. We still have very little empty ice, right? So hopefully that answers some of your questions.
Thank you for that, Wes. So I have Councillor Auld, and Councillor Shippold, and then Councillor Busker.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I was just going to say it is a very convoluted system, and it's tough to make everybody 100% happy. I'd like to see the Christian school in those meetings, the ice user meetings, right off the bat, and see if we can resolve the issues there. before we start redoing policies and making big sweeping changes. But as long as they're in the meetings and got their voice heard, I think that's where we start.
Yeah, I know they're invited to the spring, the postseason meeting. All the ice groups that have used the ice in the past year, always invited, and then we start planning for next year.
Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. A couple questions. Number one, to Councillor Musker's point that he brought up about Mr. Duker, minor hockey taking and booking a bunch of time and then saying, no, we don't need it. I'd like to hear a comment on that, if in fact that's what's happening, is that they're sort of going in and marking everything and then leaving nothing for anybody, and then as the year goes on, oh, we don't need this, we don't need that. I'm just not clear what that means. That's my first question.
Yeah, the block booking of ice we've done, the policy before 2021 was you could cancel ice with 2 weeks' notice. And then what we were finding is that with less than 2 weeks' notice, it's hard for us to find somebody to fill that ice. So we started, here's your block of ice from October 31st to the end of February. This is what you booked, this is what you're paying for, so that we're not stuck with that. But if they return ice, we've had no difficulties reselling it. It's just a matter of economically, it's really hard. I'm, trying to run an arena. Yes, we're giving this block time. You're paying for it, regardless of whether you scheduled it. But at the end of October, they return that ice to us, and it's sold. We're getting calls regularly from teams from out of the cities. Do you have ice on the weekend? We'd like to host a tournament. Well, no, we don't. But we're trying to satisfy it. And I think for the most part, we do meet the needs of our user groups, right? And whether it's, rec hockey, their numbers continue to grow. Minor hockey's numbers continue to grow. It's a challenge for us to meet the requirements. We got some that are booking ice at 7 o'clock in the morning. Do that preschool. I know figure skaters actually book ice during the day. Sometimes the kids pull out of school, they can do that. And then our regular school group users are there all the time. So again, joint use makes good use of our ice during the day. Senior shinny is growing, so trying to promote that daytime use. And then from 4 o'clock on till 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night, every day is booked solid.
Councillor Musk. Did you have another question, Councillor Shipple?
Well, I'm not sure I got my answer for this question.
Okay.
So, the question I had is, does minor hockey book a block of room, or a block of ice time? Or does the rec board say, here's your ice time? According to what is wrote in there in Mr. Duker's report, it appears that minor hockey goes in and sort of marks all their spots. But I think what I just heard from you, that's not correct. I'm just confused here, so I just want to get
Yeah,
something.
so at the start of the season, minor hockey has so much teams, their league requires them to give X number of slots per team so that their league scheduler can coordinate all the ice times with all the other communities. So they are getting a block of ice, but as soon as the schedule is confirmed by the league, that block of ice is what they don't use is released. But it's a requirement of their league to give so much ice so that their leagues can do their scheduling. It's not, okay, you got 12 teams, each team gets 8 ice slots, and good luck league trying to coordinate and all the different communities within those restrictions. So we give them a large block of ice so that their league can do what they need to do to schedule. And then we put a timeline, we need that ice confirmed by the end of October. It doesn't always happen because their leagues sometimes are late getting their schedules out, but by the end of October, then we know, well, here's the ice that you've committed to, and this is what you'll be charged for the rest of the season. We don't have a 72-hour cancellation policy. We took that away only because it's really hard with 72 hours notice for us to go out to the community or go to the groups like Mr. Duke was talking with the school and say, here, you've got 72 hours to try to find a team to play. But come the end of October, here's all that ice that's returned, our scheduler can go to each group and say, here's what we've got, what do you want? And that's when we start allocating to all those other groups. I guess that's how my distinction between the sanctioned hockey, because minor hockey has, through their leagues, is required to give so many ice slots per team. So that the leagues can do what they need to do to create the schedules. So I would love for them to say, no, here's the ice league, you work it out with less ice. And that's the same for many of the minor hockey organizations. When I was working in Pinoka, it was the same. Stettler, Camrose, many of those that are outside the policies that Mr. Duker listed. Some of the communities, like Bashaw, one rink, small community, they have lots of ice time, and they maybe don't need to make the distinction between sanctioned, unsanctioned youth out of town, the various categories that you can create in a policy. Every community is a little different. I don't know if that's answered your question. Yes, they do get a block of time.
So then the question, and Mr. Duker's here because he's looking for ice time. So in our appendix, we don't have the Mustangs, or Ringette, or Rocky Christian School in there. So I think what I just heard you say is minor hockey takes and books all the time, and in October, if we're lucky, they're going to give us ice back that then these organizations can get. So they really are on hold until then, or do they get, where, I know there's a priorities list, but his point is does a priorities list work? Because of sanctioned hockey and who is sanctioned hockey. And he made a comment about how some teams have priority teams, or some of the policies have priority teams. We don't have that. So I think what Mr. Duker's saying, we need to have a look at this and how it's coming together to make sure everybody's got fair and equitable ice time. And I think what I heard this morning is that's maybe not necessarily true until after October or maybe even later. And so these people are planning schedules. So how do they plan a schedule when it becomes November, for example, when minor hockey determines that they don't need some ice time? So I just question if our system is working, and when looking at other policies here, I can sort of read into theirs that possibly they weren't working there, and that's why they've done them the way they've done them. They made it more equitable, as Mr. Duker has indicated, and more fair, as he's indicated, and I think that's what we need to do. So I think when you said you got to review it, I think it needs review.
Yeah.
To that, one of the things that it talks about in here is dressing rooms and what happens with dressing rooms. We don't have that in our policy, but it's basically in the others, all of them, about what you can and can't do with dressing rooms and policies around dressing rooms. So I'm not sure if that's an issue or not an issue with us. So I'm just thinking if we're cleaning or looking at it, that might be something that we look at as well.
Yeah. I know that Mr. Duker coming to the table early in the year, it's a matter of how many ice times does he see? Okay, I want a primetime ice slot every second Friday night. I can pretty much guarantee that's not going to happen, but giving them an ice time sometime during the week or weekend. Okay, I need 8 home ice slots throughout the season. Come to the table, okay, working out 2 ice slots a month. Can minor hockey do with less than that as they give their league? Absolutely. So again, but when you come to the table in September, all those times have been allocated or given to the leagues to work on. If we give them less time, then hopefully they can work around that. But it's something certainly that's discussed at our ice user meetings. Dressing rooms, no issues other than they're small. For every practice, a team gets 1 ice time. For every game, there's 2 dressing rooms assigned. The challenge is for the little guys, where they're splitting the ice in half, and you got 4 teams using 2 dressing rooms. That's just the way of the world since Hockey Canada has changed some of how they control the U5s, the U7s, where they use half ice, and yet we don't have a dressing room for each of those 4 teams when we've only got 4 dressing rooms per sheet of ice.
I see Councillor Moosker has a question.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Thanks for taking the time to really draw this out for us, Mr. Ament. Excuse me. There's no doubt in my mind that the Rec Department strives to provide equitable, reasonable, and fair access to meet the needs of the community. There's no doubt. My hope is that with Rocky Christian School and some of these other new organizations being there at the initial meeting is going to just rectify this. But is it possible that we do a bit of a review and maybe consolidate some of these priorities to, there are 10 priorities or more, and is that something that could be considered?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So just having been part of a user group for many years and sitting in these ICE user meetings, they are a very collaborative meeting. Anytime a new group comes into play, that's where we have this initial problem, because they're trying to get ICE into a system that's full. But through the collaborative process of the ICE user meeting, that's where all of these conflicts are resolved. And if they can't be resolved because there's just not enough ICE for everybody, then it falls back to the policy of the priorities. But that ICE user meeting is very, very important for any, especially a new user group, to attend, because that's where the collaboration works. So, do we need to look at this policy? I guess that's a council decision, if we need to relook at this policy. You know, from experience, the ICE user meeting solves 95% of the problems. You know, the ones that can't be solved, then the policy comes into place to
We
address
certainly
it.
are, I think, in talking with our ICE scheduler, our plan is to relook at the policy, certainly with some of the additional requests with the new groups like Ringette and now with the Christian School. You know, they had a program back in the day, starting, now they're running like a hockey academy. You know, some other communities that have a hockey academy, they're there, they practice during the week, and they don't play games because most of the kids that are in the school are playing in one of the other organizations as well. But if they're having a group within the school, that you will have to consider, you know, what their ICE requests and needs are and address that in a policy as well.
Okay, so what's council's thoughts on the presentation and the discussion we've had? Councillor Schippold.
Okay, thank you, Acting Mayor. I'll just make a motion that we let resolve the council accept the delegation presentation by Mr. Duker as information.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion on that motion? I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on our agenda.
Sorry, can I
oh,
make a second
Yes.
motion as well and see where that goes? And
Yep.
that's just for a review of the present policy.
Okay.
And let it resolve the council instruct administration to review the ICE allocation policy and bring back a draft policy to a future GPC meeting.
Okay, so we have that motion. Do we have discussion on that motion? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. I don't really know if it's necessary to review the policy at this time. This year has been a bit of a shift year where there's been increased users coming on board. Maybe we just see how the user group meeting at the end of the season goes, and if they're looking at the same amount and number of groups and number of additions to be starting up in the fall, and then we'd also have an idea of, you know, with a report coming back from Wes as to if it is a struggle and, you know, the scheduling, because there is more users, and then maybe review the policy at a later date.
Okay, more discussion on the particular motion? Okay, not seeing any more discussion, so I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? And that is defeated. Okay, so moving on to old business, the community standards bylaw, Mr. Kraus?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. So, as council is aware, we've been looking at the community standards bylaw, and council has asked for some revisions where previously it just specified window wrap. So administration has done some amendments to it for council's consideration. So one is including definition of window covering, which provides more options for a business owner to cover the window wrap, painting, or any other innovative window treatment approved by the town. So it leaves it wide open for options to come in as long as it meets the town standard. And so that's reflected again in section 4, where it's been changed to window covering versus window wrap. And of course, it also in Schedule A, the change to window wrap to window covering. And also with that, we amended the policy that also referred to window wrap and changed the wording to window covering because there's a grant available for business owners for that. So we leave it for council's discussion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kraus. I know we've had a few kick at the cats on this particular bylaw. Do we have more discussion on this? Not seeing any discussion. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Deputy Mayor Hutchinson. Saw your finger going.
Yeah, I was just looking for what the motion would be.
First reading.
Is it first reading or to approve the amended policy? It is first reading. Okay, sorry. Be it resolved that council give first reading to Community Standards Bylaw 2025/02.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. And Councillor Auld.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'd make a second motion that be it resolved that council gives second reading to the Community Standards Bylaw 2025/02.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Councillor Caprero.
Be it resolved that council give unanimous consent to proceed to final reading to Community Standards Bylaw 2025/02.
Thank you for that motion. More discussion? Councillor Hutchinson, or Deputy Mayor Hutchinson? Okay. I'll call that to a vote then. All those in favor? And that is carried. And we have one more recommended motion. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. Be it resolved that council give final reading to Community Standards Bylaw 2025/02.
Okay, thank you for that. Any discussion on that? Call that to a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. So we have a second resolution that we're looking for as well, Mr. Kraus, for the policy. Councillor Auld.
I'd make the motion that council approve the amended storefront improvement policy, program policy 003/2024 and schedules as presented.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Discussion on that particular motion? Seeing none, call it to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to new business. Correspondence for action, the Blue Mountain Power Co-op Annual AGM, April 15th, and I believe this is in Grimby, is where it is. Is this something we normally attend, Mr. Kraus, or?
So Acting Mayor, we get invited each year, or council member, and I think it's been off and on that council has attended. So.
Councillor Shipple.
Last year I attended in Caroline.
I am available to attend this if council sees the need for us to attend this. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
Thank you. Just to Councillor Chappelle, what was reviewed? Was there a takeaway or just community building?
The latter, community building.
Councillor Ald. Oh, okay, sorry.
They,
Yeah, go ahead.
thank you. They are an employer within our community. So much like a credit union or things like that. So I think it's worth going. So,
Okay, as I said, I am available to attend this meeting if council desires us to be there. Councillor Shipple.
also make the motion that the acting mayor attend the meeting in Rimby for the Blue Mountain Power Co-op on April 15th
Okay, thank you for that motion.
on behalf of the town.
Any discussion on that motion? I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, moving on to item 10. We have correspondence for information. We have 4 points in there. Does anyone have anything they need to bring out of there or talk about? Councillor Shipple.
10.3, which is about policing. They give examples of, there's pooled costs and then there's pooled indirect and pooled direct costs. And in the pooled direct costs, they give examples of what the costs were in 23 and 24. And I'm not sure if it's a typo or not, but in the pool indirect graph that they have on there, they only have 1 year of costs in there, estimated costs. So, and when you look at the numbers, I'm just not sure why they wouldn't give us, in one chart they give us a previous year to compare to, and then in the following other chart they don't. And I'm not sure what that's all about.
I'm not sure if you're able to even answer that question, Mr. Crowe? Yeah.
I don't think you can answer that question.
Yeah.
I just found the letter, there's another one of those letters that almost gives you the information you're looking for. So, I guess we accept it as information, but I just found it interesting that they wouldn't give us comparisons from the year prior.
Do you want any further action on that or just a comment? Okay. So any other comments on the correspondence for information? If not, just looking for a motion to accept as information. Councillor Capero.
I'll make a motion to accept for information 10.1 to 10.4.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Any discussion on that? Call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to the action list for this week. Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor. So going through the open items, so Community Standards Bylaw, Council finalized that today. The Rocky Clearwater IDP, that meeting has been established and advertisements going out for the public hearing on that. ATCO franchise agreement, I think we're just ending our advertising period on that, and then that would be sent to ATCO and then to the Alberta Utility Commission for review and approval. Tax forfeiture property, that is with legal right now to get the transfer done. So.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions about the action list? Councillor Ald.
I'll just make the motion that we accept the action list for March 4th as information.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to administrative inquiries. Do we have any administrative inquiries for this week? Seeing none, moving on to notice of motion. Do we have any notice of motion for this week? Councillor Shipple.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I do have a notice of motion if I could put forward, please. And that's let it be resolved that council instruct administration to prepare a report for financial incentive options to promote and encourage new and expanded commercial or industrial development, and existing buildings require leaseholder improvements.
Okay, thank you for that notice of motion. So that will go to our next council meeting, correct? Yes, for council's consideration. Okay, thank you. And I do have a notice of motion as well. After sitting through the budget presentations with AB Munis and looking at the education requisition, is going to be increased by 6.3% this year and probably 10% next year, which comes onto our municipal tax bills. So my notice of motion is to put forward a resolution at AB Munis to have the education portion of the taxes removed from municipal duties, to have those separated so that we have municipal taxes as a municipal bill and education taxes as an education tax bill. And that, of course, will go to the next council meeting for discussion. Okay, any other notices of motion? Seeing none, then we will take a 5-minute break and we will move into closed session. Okay, we are back to our live meeting, and we're just looking for a motion to go into closed session. Counselor Caprero.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you for that motion. Discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. So we'll now move into closed session. Okay, we are back in live session, and we have a couple of motions coming out of closed session. Deputy Mayor Hutchinson.
I'd like to make a motion that, for admin to direct admin to schedule a full-day planning session workshop for council.
Okay, thank you for that motion. Do we have any discussion on that? Call that to a vote. All those in favor? That is carried. And we have a second motion, Councillor Schifelt.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. Yes, that we accept the CEO's dialogue as information.
Thank you for that. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. And I will adjourn the meeting at 12:28.